So really a really bullish moment for Bitcoin, and it's kind of no surprise that we're seeing Bitcoin moving back over 100,000 and beyond.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. Joining me is Bitwise Asset Management European Head Bradley Duke. And Bradley, very good to speak with you. So we have Bitcoin flirting with that $100,000 level again. So 99,800 just a short while ago. And the last time it was at these levels was in February, Bradley. So what's driving it?
Right. So yeah, it's a very interesting day. I suspect that Bitcoin could cross the 100,000 line again today, potentially. And I think that it's been pushed up. It's really the last, from a dip of around 76,000 not that long ago. Bitcoin has been, rallying, but I would say like it's been a slow, measured rally. It hasn't happened overnight. It's been edging its way up, and it's as a result of some really significant tailwinds. Some of which we've discussed before, but just to go through them again, the expectation of inflation is something that we've seen that there's a correlation to increase in the price of Bitcoin if there's a high expectation of inflation. This is certainly the case with the US tariff policy. Tariffs make everything more expensive. So the expectations of inflation are certainly there. We're also seeing this phenomenon as well, which could have long-term ramifications for the US economy, specifically as as in a macro context, and that's de-dollarization. So the US dollar has definitely occupied a very privileged place in the world economy, but we've seen that there's been a shift, a trend away from the dollar for holding reserve as a reserve currency for countries around the world. Historically, a lot of countries held US treasuries and in big amounts, and effectively were lending to the US as part of buying US debt effectively. But there's been a movement away from US treasuries, and it possibly tied in, or it's likely that this is tied into the quite aggressive tariff policy that the US has been conducting. And the investors which are often sovereign investors, moving away towards other assets, including gold. We've seen gold hitting all-time highs recently, and increasingly Bitcoin. And really, I think one of the many aspects or qualities of Bitcoin is that it's neutral. It's neutral. This has a neutrality. It's not attached to any one country or company or people. It's really just exists where the internet exists, and that neutrality has become a trump card for Bitcoin and adoption in this time of de-dollarization, because people see it as increasingly as one of the options in terms of a safe haven asset, and also as a way of a store of value, the better money, and so that's one of the tailwinds. We've also seen a weak dollar, and this is coupled with the expansion of global money supply. Both of these are strong tailwinds for the price of Bitcoin, and they're deeply interrelated. And you may ask, why does Bitcoin actually benefit from dollar weakness in the first place? And really, if you look at global money supply and you track the price of Bitcoin, you can see that there's a very, very strong correlation. If you've got to lag the money supply curve by 3 months, because it takes a bit of time for the effect of the expansion of M2 to be felt. But you can see that they track each other very, very closely. So as money supply expands, so does the price of Bitcoin. It goes up, and also we look at the dollar index and how a chart of the dollar index versus global money supply growth, and it's a very interesting. It's inversely correlated. You see when the one goes up, the other goes down, and it's the interaction of these 2 points that really is behind. This is why your dollar weakness fuels the price of Bitcoin. and money supply expansion fuels the money supply. Fuels the growth in the price of Bitcoin too.
Bradley, we've chatted before about sovereigns increasing their holdings of Bitcoin, but also corporates. Are you seeing more corporate adoption of Bitcoin to hold in their treasury?
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of people who work in crypto and in Bitcoin didn't see coming, and now it's kind of obvious that it's there. It's becoming a big part, but we didn't see this coming. We always anticipated that sovereign wealth or countries could hold Bitcoin as part of their strategic reserve or their as an asset alongside gold. But the corporate adoption is one that's been really, really interesting. So you see increasingly on the demand side, we know that Bitcoin has got a 21 million fixed supply that can never be improved and increased. And we see this year so far in 2025 that corporations have bought over 100,000 Bitcoin, so 101,391 Bitcoin to be exact. And that's we're talking about here. These are corporations. These are listed corporations who declare their holdings. And the total supply in 2025 of Bitcoin has been 47,000, just over 47,000 Bitcoin. So this is more than double. Effectively, these corporations are gobbling up the available Bitcoin supply, and more, twice as much effectively. And this is just looking at, again, looking at the listed corporations, ones that actually, are quoted on a stock exchange. And this is before we look at other kinds of investors, retail investors, sovereign investors, so countries that are buying Bitcoin, and also states. That we've seen now that 2 states in the US have their own Bitcoin, strategic reserves, and they're going to start. They're going to have a policy of buying a certain percentage of their treasury and holding it in Bitcoin. So it's a really bullish moment for Bitcoin, and it's kind of no surprise that we're seeing Bitcoin moving back over 100,000 and beyond.
We'll see if it gets there today, Bradley. Thanks as always for your insights.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Bradley Duke is European Head of Bitwise Asset Management.